Well, good afternoon. My name is Warren Shaw. I'm Associate Director of Campus Life, and I want to welcome you to our fourth installment of the Student Union Engagement Series. Today, we are presenting a presentation on technology, and we are joined by Willie Freeman and Frank Rodriguez. Willie Freeman is our Director of E-Learning, and Frank Rodriguez is an application developer for OIT. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and begin. Willie Freeman is going to be presenting the failure of fear in technology. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Warren. So I have a number on the screen, 6,760. Anybody have an idea of what that number is? No? 6,760 is the number of colleges and universities in this country right now, at least as of the end of 2017. So when you're looking at being an undergrad or a graduate student at a university, and you're thinking about, all right, when I graduate and I want to go out into the real world and start pursuing my career, I want you to keep in mind how many people are pursuing the exact same dream. And if you have people pursuing the exact same dream that you're pursuing, one of the questions that comes up is, how do you deal with competing for those positions in those careers? I would encourage you to pursue excellence. And the way you can do that while you're in school is to not shy away from the technology that's available. We have made Google Apps, they call them OWL apps, Office 365, and a slew of other technologies available to FAU students. Now, we may use those just to communicate. On occasion, we may use them to turn in products and projects to your professors. But there's so much more that can be done with these tools, especially when you go out into the rest of the world. So what I want to encourage you to do today, the idea that I'm presenting, is that rather than saying, well, I have these things and I'll do what I see everyone else doing because I don't want to go above and beyond or I don't want to make a mistake with them, I want you to take whatever fear you may have related to technology and completely put it in a box and dispel it. The reason the topic for my talk was the failure of fear instead of the fear of failure is that many times when we ask people why they don't do things, they say, I was afraid that I'd mess up. Technology is something, regardless which generation you're in, seems to be taking over a little bit of everything we do. Today's cash register is technology. Today's cars are more computer than steel. And it isn't failure to use the technology correctly that will ever hinder you in a career. It's the actual fear of trying something new. So there are two mind states that psychologists have found we grow up with. One is the mind state called a growth mind state. The other is a fixed mind state. The growth mind state says when you encounter an obstacle, a challenge, a thing you want to change in this world. The growth mind state says, I will put forth the effort and I'll do it. And I'll figure out what I need to accomplish to get it done. They're telling me that in my business classes, I'm going to have to get more familiar with Google's suite of tools. Or I'm going to have to learn a little something about programming to be competitive in corporate America. Instead of the fixed mind state, which is, well, I'm only good at X. I'm only majoring in Y, so that's where I want to keep a narrow focus. A growth mind state says, I welcome any challenges that come my way, because if the challenge presents itself, I have not only had the opportunity to overcome it, I know that odds are someone else has done that already. The beauty of this information age we're in is there is so much knowledge readily available to you about almost any subject. How many undergraduate students do we have in here? All right. How many graduate students do we have in here? We have some that aren't sure if they're graduate or undergraduate. All right. For the undergraduate students, let's just pick one. What's your major?
Communication studies.
Communication studies. Now, there's a time when majoring in communication studies meant that you were working toward marketing. It meant you may have been working toward politics. It meant you could have been working toward journalism. Regardless what you're working in the direction of now with communication studies, you're definitely having a lot of technology play a role in that. People want to see examples of your writing, but not only just formal, but informal examples of your writing. People want to know how well you speak, but they may not be willing to travel somewhere to meet with you to do that speaking. They may actually meet you online and have you do a digital presentation. Any graduate students here that are not afraid to raise their hands? All right. Is you're a graduate student and you're majoring in, let's see, what's your major, Cindy? What's your major?
Graphic design.
Graphic design. If you're in the School of Communication and you're working on your bachelor's or your MFA in communication, graphic design used to be all about paper, scissors, glue, cardboards, paint, canvases. Now it's all those things plus Photoshop, Illustrator, After Effects. As much as we do in an analog world, we also have to deal with in a digital one. The fixed mind state says, I'm really great at writing or I'm really great at drawing. I'm going to stick with that. The growth mind state says, if I was able to conquer these things, I can take on new challenges as well. If I'm able to use a computer to deal with social media, I can also use this computer to bring about social change. If I can use a computer to find my way to the next restaurant I want to have dinner, I can use my computer to find my way to any other thing I'm trying to learn, and any information is readily available. While you are in school, working at a university or attending a university, you have access to some of the most powerful tools that can make all this information available at your fingertips. And the one idea I really want to communicate and drive home today is that if you take that step and do that, you can find ways to raise yourself above the average fray of that 6760. Do not take a passive approach to your career path. Develop a 3-year plan. Develop a 5-year plan. In the industrial age, it was very common that there were more jobs than there were workers. So getting a high school degree, a high school diploma, meant you probably could get a job somewhere doing something. As we moved into the information age, that need for a high school degree turned into a need for an undergraduate degree, a bachelor's. Whether you have your associates or your bachelor's seems to make you a little more competitive. Unfortunately, the old mind frame of go to school, get a degree, get a job, no longer holds true as something that's absolutely guaranteed. We now have more people than we have positions. When we were doing industries and everything was assembly line, people showed up, you work at one station, a product comes through, you do your part, the product goes to the next station, someone does their part, and it keeps going. As long as you could read, write, and do some basic math, you were guaranteed employment. As that industrial age moved forward, we started finding ways to optimize that process, and eventually machinery started automating some of those processes. As machinery started automating processes, jobs that needed a person to simply manipulate a thing, to make a widget, to work on a thing, got replaced by machines. Machines started doing that work. And when machines were doing that work, people had to either adapt or they actually lost their employment. Now that we've moved into a digital age, the information age as we call it, jobs are not actually guaranteed being based entirely on the idea of I'm able to show up and do this thing. Critical thinking is vital. The dream of I'll get a job and stay in this job until I retire is not a safe bet anymore. And not because the world has changed and gone out of control, but actually because as we improve processes, we're finding that a human being's greatest value comes from mind and heart, not always from muscle. If you're still in school, I want to really encourage you to pursue finding ways to use your mind and your heart to add value to this world. If you're not in school, if you've already graduated, if you haven't gone back, or if you're debating going back, I want to encourage you. Go and pursue ways to use your mind and your heart, because those are two things the machines did not have, and those are the things that right now the computer itself still needs from you. People keep saying that technology is replacing their jobs. That's not what's going on. The nature of the workforce is evolving, and what you can do is actually becoming more and more valuable, more and more powerful. You are now the people who are able to develop the instructions, to develop the guidance, to develop the designs for the next level of technology. Technology, 4 syllables, it's really a big word for tool. That's all it is. Technology just means tool. There was a point when the hammer was technology. The ink pen is technology. Did the ink pen put the pencil out of business? No, not at all. There was a time when we only had images of people because we painted them. Did the camera put the artist out of business? No. What photography did was enable fine artists to move away from realism and actually explore abstract art, surrealism. It freed the artist from being only a documentarian and provided the artist with so many more options, because if someone just needed a portrait, they could get a camera and capture a portrait. However, no matter how many filters we add to our Snapchats, it still doesn't compete with a skilled fine artist. When people tell you that technology is replacing a person, they're speaking from a place of fear. And that fear encourages us to fail. When you see tools advance and move forward, I want you to see opportunity for you to advance and move forward. Now, I'm from South Carolina, and we have a lot of old sayings. One of them is, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And people said my whole childhood that was so true. And when you hit about 40 or 50 or 60, you can't learn a new thing. Well, because of advances in technology, we have discovered there is a thing called neuroplasticity. And it is literally the high and strong and prevalent capacity for older people to learn newer things, because they can draw on the experiences that they've had from before. There's something to be said about knowing how a thing works in order to innovate. It's a lot easier to get into jazz when you know a little classical first. Breaking the rules properly involves knowing the rules. So, if there's one thing I can leave you with today, if there's one thought that I can really drive home, it's that as things move forward, never perceive it as a cause for fear. As technology moves forward, what I want you to see is your opportunity to start learning that new technology and to stay on top of that wave, not worrying about, is it going to crash over you? One of the things that will help you remember that is keep in mind that technology is a tool. Anytime you have an opportunity to learn a new tool, there is no loss to be suffered from that. Never let a tool scare you. Never let new opportunities intimidate or overwhelm you. Because when you get intimidated by a new opportunity, by a change in the landscape, when you let those things intimidate you, those are the things that put the shackles on you and chain you away from being able to adapt and move forward. There are three things that define Homo sapiens sapien, which is what they call our species of human being. Number one is the use of tools. Number two is the seeking of meaning. And number three is the constant pursuit of improvement and change. Let's make sure we remember that if we are here and we can perceive a change happening, we can deal with it. We don't have to put our heads in the sand. We don't have to avoid it. Let's remember also, when we see things changing, it doesn't mean things have gone bad. Things are moving forward. There was a time when they said the worst thing going on in schools was chewing gum. And then it was crazy haircuts. And then it was ripped jeans. And they're like, oh, everything's going crazy. No, all that's happening is each generation has their own thing that's different from the one before. I would tell you, and I really want to drive that home if I could leave you with one thing, it's that regardless how young or old you are, you can always learn, master, and innovate with new things. Thank you for your time. We're going to take about a little 5-minute break, and then we'll pick up with our next speaker.
Hello, everybody. Is that too loud? Are we good? There we go. Yeah, so the funny thing is, Willie and I, if you watch the first part of this video online later, and you were here in the beginning, we never met up to discuss our presentations. We share the same theme from a Google slideshow, but there was never a talking of, this is what we're going to do. So this was the first time I saw this presentation, and the whole time I was hoping there'd be some meeting together, some working well, some kind of looking like there was a flow to it, and it turns out there is. Let's go with a little about me. I started programming in the 90s, but that wasn't the plan. The plan was to be an oceanographer, to be a marine biologist, to go out to the sea. That was the plan. And in 9th grade, I took a marine biology class. On the second week, we cut open a shark, and I realized that I had made the wrong choice in life. That was not for me. So I ran to my algebra teacher, and I asked her in a panic, what do I do with my life? The whole plan has been this. I got scuba diving certified. I took French classes to be with Jacques Cousteau. I mean, the whole plan was there. And now what do I do with my life? I didn't know. And her husband was a mechanical engineer. And she had some of his magazines, some of his old issues. And she says, you're really good at math. Maybe you should give this a go. And I promptly read through those, and I was loving it. I grew up in a mechanical kind of world with my father and his profession. So it all kind of made sense. So I ran back to my counselor and said, what can I take in high school to get me ready for a career in mechanical engineering? And the only course you could take was a programming course. That was the only thing that was relevant for that. And, well, the rest is history. I fell in love. I wouldn't end up being a mechanical engineer. I would program from the early ages of the 90s. Currently, right now, I'm an application developer at FAU. I work for the central IT organization, OIT. I'm a passionate Groovy and Grails user, and in a few moments, you're going to get to know what that is. A husband, a father of 3, and at night, when the kids are tucked in and everyone is sleeping, that's when I take to doing what I love, which is showing others these technologies, showing anyone that they can program, that they shouldn't be afraid of programming. It's not a scary thing. I do want to say thank you. Normally people say that at the end, thank you. But I want to say thank you up front because you're about to give me 20-something minutes of your time. I hope I can give you some tools that give that back to you one day. And I think if you see some of the use cases where you wouldn't think programming would be used, and even a normal person at their day job can use it, it's actually pretty wonderful. So let's get started with our programming adventure. We're going to open up just a quick little app, and hopefully that can be seen. We're going to create what you would normally do in your typical intro to programming course. In an undergraduate or graduate level, that first introductory programming. And we're going to do it in a program called Java. It's very common, and it shares a lot of similarities with other programming languages. The concept of everything being in a class or an object. And we're just going to put a lot of stuff here, and you don't have to really worry about it so much. Just know that there are things that you have to do. And you'll swiftly see the advantage of this versus other things. If we want to say hello in the most simplest program, just say hi. We have to type all these things here. And we just want it to say hello. And all this stuff going on here just to simply say hello on the screen. There we go. Hello down below. And if you want to say hello 10 times, well, we have to put it in some code and have to figure out that we want to start at 0 and until we hit 10 and I++. And this just isn't really fun. It's not exciting. It's complicated. And for most people, they just shy away. There's nothing exciting here. There's nothing legible. It's code. And sure, it's not zeros and ones and all this fancy machine language, but it's just clunky and cluttery and not exciting. This will say hello 10 times, hopefully. You can see it down below. There it goes, 10 times. With the programming language that I love and I have found my passion for, it's called Groovy. It's built on top of Java, but it needs a lot less to do things. Besides this little piece that every program needs to know where to start, saying hello is just as simple as a little print hello. We run that. It's going to say hello on the screen. And before, when we did this little loop here, we can, since they are built together, we can put them together. And Groovy will understand Java, and you can use your code and not have to rewrite everything from scratch. And there it goes, hello a bunch of times. But the beauty of Groovy is things don't have to be so complicated. We can just get rid of this, get rid of this, and we could say 10 times. That's it, 10 times. If we run that, there we go, 10 times. Just from looking at the two, you look at this and what is this? And even worse, if you're at a programming interview for a programming job, you have to remember all these little syntax and this little bracket here and all these things. Whereas here, it just feels natural, 10 times, and that's it. And the language goes beyond that, Groovy. There's so many nice, simple things for you. If you want to make a list of items, let me zoom that in, I apologize. Just notice how small that was. There we go. If you want to make a list of items over in the Java side, you have to know all this syntax, and I won't even type it, but you have to know what kind of list you want to make and what you want to put in that list. Groovy doesn't really care. Groovy just wants to know, I want to make a grocery list. And it just needs to know that it's a list. That's what these little brackets tell it. And if you want to add something to that list, just add something to that list. And if you want to display the contents of that list, similar to how we did this 10 times here, we just say grocery list dot each and print line the item. And there is the item. This language does a lot of great things, but some of the things I use it for, when I mentioned, you'll be surprised where you'll use this. We changed the system, and that font is really tiny. We modified one of our systems, and we lost the code to it. So all we had was this weird breakdown of how it was stored, and what we needed was this value here and this value here. And we needed it to look like this. We needed to obtain that code, but it was 240 something country codes. And doing that by hand, we thought of, we can put it in Excel, we can do it by hand, copy paste. But it turns out with Groovy, it was just a few lines of code, and that gives us a nice, beautiful, simple output, instead of doing it by hand or things like that. But all this is not, it's very basic, bare bones programming stuff, but the exciting stuff is making web applications. Yes, hi, question?
Hi, how does that, the Groovy, compare to like Swift?
Swift, okay, Swift is Apple's
Yeah.
programming language for iOS currently,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
So you'll see a lot of influences with all the languages, right? Like Swift, I think, is also an object-oriented programming language, so you'll see many similarities there. The advantage of Groovy, which is actually what you're going to see in this next part, is since it shares this Java ecosystem, you can bring it to any place that is already doing Java.
Okay.
So Java's, if you look on jobs online, local jobs, Java is this huge thing. It's one of the #1 programming languages. So there's this huge, vast amount of opportunities there. You can introduce them, these little simple improvements, and they can introduce it seamlessly into the organization. Swift is a whole other undertaking and a whole other layer. But again, this is what you get in your coursework, and sure, we could output some stuff to the screen, but the exciting stuff is making web applications, putting stuff out there for the web. And we're actually going to make, in just a few seconds, an event page. So if you wanted folks to come in and sign up for an event, maybe like today, this is going to be something where we'll do it, and with very little code. There's actually going to be very few, less than the demo we just did. So to get started, we basically have to tell that program, what do we want to store? And we're going to say, for an event, well, we want to know the person's first name, last name, their email address, so we can reach out to them and give them information, and how many people are attending with them. With Groovy, all you do is tell it, we're going to store something that's a first name. There we go. A first name. We're going to store a last name, an email address, and the people attending. That's it. That's all we need. We could issue a command here and tell Grails to generate everything we need for the event. And it will go behind the scenes and make all the things we need, the web pages, the logic and data behind the scenes, everything we need to do, it'll create for us. And by this application that I opened here, there was nothing done. It was just a bare bones, nothing out of the box application. We added these 4 lines of code, ran that command down there, and when we hit play, we are going to have a complete web application that will handle requests from the browser. It'll handle the sign up, presenting to users the first name, the last name, and it'll do a lot more magical stuff under the hood, which is what makes this framework so amazing. It'll, while it runs and gets ready, it'll go ahead and create a database for us behind the scenes, so that if you have a team of individuals who want to run reports or want to get some information real time, they can ask information from the database. It's running, there we go. It's going to give us first a landing page to let us know that everything's working. This gives us some information about our application, what versions they are, some of the things there. But the exciting stuff is when we go to what we created, the events. Currently, there's no one signed up for the event here. But here's that screen. Now we've created one, and if we see the list, we can see the folks attending. One of the things that Grails is really great about is letting us do things like say we say -4 attendees, and we'll just say they put a wrong email address. Let that go through because we haven't told it that that's not acceptable. In a lot of programming languages, you now have to go and look up JavaScript and how to validate things. And you look through like the internet and you find 20 different tutorials on how to do it and you're not really sure. Grails is really amazing in that it just says, well, just tell me what those things are. We're going to say that, we can even leave these out. We're going to do an email. We're going to say that the email must be an email. True. And the people attending, the minimum amount of people attending is 0. We restart the application. And I apologize, this computer is very old, so she's slow, but if you have a faster computer, this happens really fast. But these little things here let you just say the person must enter an email address, and the minimum attending folks must be 0, no less. There we go. If we head over here. And if we try to enter something that is not an email address, try to enter -4. And great. It'll let us know if we must enter a valid email address. And please enter a value greater than 0. All that with just a few lines of code. And the framework goes beyond that, the Grails framework. It lets you not worry about, if you were to Google, how do I safely take people's passwords? Because you're scared, you've seen all these hacks online and all these hundreds of thousands of passwords are obtained. It's on the responsibility of the programmer normally to find out what the best methods are. But with something like Grails, this framework here, it makes a lot of those decisions for you. It offers you enterprise grade like security just out of the box by adding a few simple plugins. You don't fall into that trap of, did I do the right thing? Should I be scared? It just works. It's a remarkable framework, and it's all tied into this whole concept of Groovy and Grails. Groovy being this programming language here, and Grails being the framework, the wrapper, if you will, that puts everything together. That was a bit of a whirlwind of a tour. The technologies we used there were listed here. The Java, Grails, and this application we're using to create here. All these tools are available to you free as a student. Specifically this editor here. It's all available to you completely free. And if you wanted to obtain more information on any of the things we saw today, there is the Grails.org site, the official site, which has guides, beginner's guides. There's a great book available out there as well. And on my site, I'll be posting a series of tutorials and much slower approaches to doing all the things we did today online. And there's also wonderful conferences that are available for folks to attend. Thank you.
So before we conclude today, again, we want to thank Frank Rodriguez and Willie Freeman to give them all both another round of applause, please. We have some participants online as well too, so we want to thank them for participation. But before we get you guys out of here, I want to bring up Jasmine Morales from Broward OIT here on our campus here. We'll tell you a little bit of the programs and services that are offered here in LA building through Broward Technology. Thanks, Jasmine.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Here on the Davie campus, we pride ourselves in printing for student services for requests. Also, for a lot of people don't know, you're also able to print for personal requests. So we actually provide poster prints up to 60 feet. We have banner size paper, banner paper. We have canvas paper for personal family photos. We also have, of course, we can, sorry. We also have, a lot of students don't know here, but we have the ability to, you actually can register to our wireless. Whenever we find a student who doesn't know that you can actually use our wireless services for free, we try to, register your devices online. You can register your phone, your tablet, your laptop. If you have any questions, we are available over in the Liberal Arts Building here at Davie Campus. I was saying before, I don't know if anybody heard me before, we print posters here at Davie Campus for our graphic design students, multimedia students, but anyone can print. You can print personal items, you can print items for events that you're having at your home or for your church or anything. It's available to students, faculty, and staff. If you have any issues or any questions, we're very approachable. And we like to think, I can think my staff is very friendly, and if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. I make myself available for folks when, they're new to the area, and you can see they're asking for help. Like I said before, we're available in the Liberal Arts Building on the 3rd floor. Thank you.
So that will conclude our presentation today. Again, we want to thank our guest speakers for coming through. The Tech Talk series may continue in the fall semester, but more importantly, the student engagement series will definitely continue potentially in the summer. So make sure you're following us on Instagram, @FAUDavie_Campus Life. We'll announce all of our programs and events that way and through other forms of social media. But thank you all for your time today, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.